My name is Bubba Salko, CEO, President, and founder of Love Thy Nerd, and you are watching and or listening to the NCMU podcast, where we are dedicated to raising up and training the next generation of nerd culture ministers and missionaries. Joined with me today is my friend, Brad Hickey. Brad, what's going on, man?
Hey, not much. How you doing, Bubba?
I'm doing pretty well. We were talking about a little bit about this before we started rolling, but there's a massive hailstorm that came right after, like a day after the eclipse. And so we got a nice, beautiful eclipse. I was in the path of totality. And then the omen hit with big, like egg size, softball size, golf ball, all the different sizes of hail. Busted windows all over the place. But not for me, though.
That's horrible.
But not for me. Horrible. Not for me, though. Yeah. But hey, the eclipse was beautiful. Did you get to see the eclipse at all?
No, I was teaching. So we got out of class about 5 minutes before. We ran out and we just had heavy cloud cover. So it was just a slight bit dimmer, but that was it.
We had cloud cover here in Central Texas. I mean, because again, path of totality, right? Like everybody thought that they were going to be able to see everything and it was going to be great and wonderful. And then about 3 days before, maybe 4 days before, they released a forecast and it was massive, like in our area specifically, hey, the highest probability of cloud cover. But it was perfect. It was perfect.
Wow.
And so what ended up happening was we had the cloud cover and we didn't need the glasses because you could see the eclipse happening through the cloud cover. Oh,
that's amazing.
C'est magnifique. Just if you've never seen a total eclipse, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Go travel and see one of these things. They're absolutely breathtaking, awe-inspiring. It was kind of an emotional experience for me. This is not the Eclipse podcast. This is not what we're talking about here. I don't even know why you asked me about it. Come on, Brad. We're talking about something else today. No, but I want to hear, and I want our listeners to hear and to know about Brad Hickey. So why do we have you on this podcast? Who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your family, and let's get to know Brad.
Sure. So let's see. I am living in Iowa right now, but I did not originally start here. So I lived. Well, first of all, I'm director of gaming at Dordt University. And I lived in California for 44 out of the 46 years of my life. And I came out here to start a gaming program at Dordt University. And I have been married. We're just about to celebrate, not too long, our 25th anniversary, my wife and I. Her name is Kendra. And I have two incredible daughters, Ileana, who is my gaming girl, who is 14, sadly recently beginning to beat me in Smash Brothers after many years, and me doing the same to her.
So sorry about that. Just ground her. Like, that's probably the easiest thing to do. Take away her video game time.
I'm actually pretty proud of her. It just gets where, after she beats me 15 times in a row, and I am absolutely going all out. There's just a little bit of chagrin there. But hey, it's okay. I trained her well, I guess.
There you go. Take the credit. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. My eldest is, her name is Kiara, and she's about to turn 18, and she's our first to go to college, first to leave the nest, and so her mother and I are kind of beginning to grieve that a little bit, but also really excited for her and for, she's going into criminal justice and thinking about the National Guard. And, just pleased as punch with where she's going, where she's headed. And so, yeah, that's been our lives for the last 3 years. I got my education out in California. So went to Simpson for my undergrad, went to Fuller Theological Seminary for my undergraduate and my PhD. I've been a youth pastor quite a bit in the past. My biggest gig was about 4 or 5 years at one of the larger Lutheran churches in Northern California. With I think it was junior high and high school, so I did both.
Oh wow!
Spent a lot of time with that.
Like as
really,
the youth pastor, or like
yes,
was
youth,
that
youth director over both the senior high and junior high.
So now we have to have this conversation. We have to ask about it. Mark is a former youth pastor. I am a former youth pastor. A lot of people that we've had on this podcast are former youth pastors. What is your favorite youth game that you've ever played?
Oh man. That's a great one. I think that for us, it was often, oh gosh, they love, but it was like a tradition from their previous youth director. I think they loved to play, what was that game? It was like hide and seek, but it was an advanced form of it. I don't even remember.
Is it Sardines,
it's been a long time.
maybe?
Yeah, I think it might have been Sardines.
Okay, yeah.
It was an old Lutheran church with all these nooks and crannies, so they loved it.
Follow-up question. What was the worst game you guys ever played? I'm talking like kids might be on their way to the hospital after it, letters from parents, like that kind of stuff, like the real good stuff.
I mean, I can't speak totally to that because I always did really off-the-wall games that there was no name for, but I remember that we would celebrate certain things with pies to the face. And I remember one time I forgot to defrost, and so the girl almost had a broken nose.
Yes,
so I got some complaints about that. That's the kind of stuff
we're looking for. Yeah. How did you not remember? How did you not know? I know how you couldn't have remembered. How did you not know that the pie was not defrosted in that moment? Or did you think it was just going to be okay, or it might?
So many things were going on that day. There was like a bunch of celebrations. I think about my lesson, all that stuff, and it just slipped through the cracks. And before I knew it, I had a crying, senior high school girl, and I was like, "What happened?" And I felt like a horrible youth director.
Did she have picture day the next day? Was she getting her senior photos done?
I hope not.
That would have been terrible. I mean, it would have made for a better story, but it would have been terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I wanted. It felt much worse than I did.
You said you did youth ministry for how long? Total?
If I combine the things, probably around 9 or 10 years.
Wow. Those are some dog years in youth ministry. When you start counting the years. Yeah, I did about 5.5. And so, and then just found myself constantly working with students, time and time again. And you're in a situation where you're still kind of working with, students, in university. But my wife, just the other day, she said this. Somebody said the phrase, I think they're about our age, about somebody else. And they were like, well, how old are they? And they go, well, they're about 40. And Anna's like, 40? I'll be 38 this year. I was like, hey, babe, we're almost 40. Like, we're like right there. And she's like, oh my gosh. She was like taken aback because you just forget how old you are when you're around such youthful exuberance all the time. It's exhausting. It's exhausting, Brad.
And it's also hard, even as a professor, when I remember my first time teaching my gaming class, and I mentioned Street Fighter 2 because I'm like, everybody knows Street Fighter 2. Nobody had any idea. They thought it was super retro.
Oh, Gen Z. We hardly knew ye. Okay.
That's right.
Thanks for that. My kids use the phrase of the late 1900s unironically. And so it's all changing, Brad, and I don't like it. It. Stay off my lawn. That's all I'm saying.
That's right.
Hey, so speaking of Street Fighter and video games and nerd culture, like you talked a little bit about Dordt, and it's important to note that it is Dordt, D-O-R-D-T, not Dork, D-O-R-K. And so when
that's an important distinction.
When I have talked about this with people, I know in my head what I am saying out loud, and they're like, well, hold on, did you just say Dordt University? And I was like, well, actually, no, I didn't. But that would make a lot more sense with like this thing that we are doing together, right? And so,
Yes.
so speak a little bit about like what you are doing with Dordt in nerd culture ministry. Like why are you here on this podcast specifically?
Yeah. So it was when I wrote my dissertation for my PhD on basically how do we as Christians engage nerd culture, but specifically for that dissertation, it was video games. Because, as I wrote it, for me, video games have always played a very significant part in my life, just even nerd culture as general. I wasn't as much into anime or comics or anything like that, but video games and things like fantasy, like Tolkien, Lewis, they really provide a foundation in my life, and even things like World of Warcraft, providing me with an opportunity to see how really good things that can happen in video games for community and solidarity. So, that journey, at first I wrote my dissertation as sort of a fun project for myself to get to know video games in a different way. I began to see first how the church has interpreted gaming and the things like satanic panic, and that there has been a lot of engagement with all these new forms of play in modern culture. The church tends to be kind of hands off on that. But I began to see, one of my operative questions was, what is the Holy Spirit doing in video games? Because I had heard all the negative stuff, the violence and addiction and unhealth. But what I began to see, I began to read stories about shut-ins who, they knew they were going to die young, but they played World of Warcraft and they experienced a level of they fell in love, they were able to run and leap and jump like they couldn't in the real world. And they became counselors to hundreds of people, and I said, that's not falling into the categories of violence and addiction and stuff. This is something else. And if we believe that God is moving in the world, there's no place that God will not go to redeem the people he loves, and that his activity can be seen in the world, then is this not, at least, even if it's an imperfect echo, even if it's not Christian, is this not good? Is this not something that pleases him? Perhaps we're missing something here. And so I continued to write, and what emerged was, I suddenly was like, wait a second. So in my own denomination, we often say things like, every square inch of creation is God's. And I was thinking, well, we say it, but we don't really mean it. And so that people who are gifted by the Holy Spirit with play-related abilities or gaming-related abilities, being able to tell an incredible story in Dungeons and Dragons with other people, or being able to take gaming design and take it to another level where it really communicates love through its interface and other things like that, that the church isn't taking this seriously enough, that the Holy Spirit has raised these people up for a purpose in a time such as this, and that these gifts are not given for no purpose. And so I was wrestling with a lot of these pieces as I came to Dordt University, and I wrote my dissertation on the practical piece was, how would we create an esports program if we were really seriously Christian, and we took our theology seriously, and we took our mission seriously to make disciples and equip them? What would that look like in an esports program? But I came to Dordt and nobody wanted esports. And so I'm like, well, this isn't good.
Shocker, right?
Yeah, I was like, well, I just moved. I bought a house out here. And so I held a gaming forum, and I invited the students to come. And I said, what do you want? And Dordt is known for primarily education, good Christian education. It values mission. And how do we equip people, and all these sorts of things. I said, and as I'm talking to the students, that's what they wanted. They wanted to know, look, we've never heard a sermon on how do I include my call of duty with my Christian discipleship and who I am. I just want, and others would just be like, I just want to be with other Christians who love the same things I love and not to feel ostracized. And so what I really quickly realized is that there are a lot of gamers out there and a lot of people in nerd culture who are Christians and love Jesus incredibly much. and they want so desperately to find a way to say, okay, I'm God's, but I also have this thing, this love of play, this love of gaming, and all the things that can manifest in. But they don't know how to unite those. And they also feel a lot of guilt and shame because their experiences with the church is to say this has no place there. That if we want to be part of the kingdom and an active part of the church, if we want a seat at the table, we have to divest of ourselves of these things that are really an important part of our identity. And I just don't think that's the gospel. I don't think that's the Bible. And what I initially sought to do was create what we call the Gaming Guild. And I convinced Dordt's leadership, much to their credit, and I told them, I said, let's give this a shot. Let's create a space and let's not hold back. Let's not give them, this Christian nerd culture at Dordt. Let's not give them rundown TVs, computers that can't play most of the games, and a space that just says, hey, you're an appendage to us. No, let's lean into this and say, we love you, we see you, we understand you. We believe deeply that you are part of the kingdom, and we love you. And let's just make that step number one. And then when we demonstrate that to them and they buy in, then how do we then provide classes? How do we offer leadership opportunities for students to then, if they're interested and they buy in that, yeah, that's right, my gaming is God's. My love for D&D is God's. My gaming designing or being a streamer, that's God's. So how do I really begin to equip myself philosophically and theologically and practically and network myself with other people of like-minded, type of things? So that's where we started building the Gaming Guild. So now I think we're about finishing up year 3, and we're a campus of about 1,500, and our Gaming Guild membership is around 150.
Oh wow, that's that is a significant amount of the overall number.
Yes, and they come from all different types, right? We say the Gaming Guild isn't just about video games; it's about any form of play. So if you love Yu-Gi-Oh, if you love Minecraft, if you love D&D or some variety of TTRPG or something else like that, you are welcome here. And if you are a casual who just wants to come down and enjoy this beautiful space and just know that people care about you, or if you want to go to the hilt and be a leader and take our classes and really dive into what that can mean. I mean, we even had one person who so bought into this. I just received a message from him probably about 6 months ago. He loved D&D. I mean, he had never played it before I came. And then he fell in love with it. And he bought into our message that you could use D&D as a form of ministry. So we train our DMs to, if you're going to lead a Dungeons and Dragons game here, you have to be guild sanctioned. You need to be trained on what a Christian DM might want to think about. And he took that, and now he's on staff at a church doing D&D ministry.
That is so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah. And I feel that's what. Oh, go ahead, please.
No, I was just gonna say, hey, let's expound on that just a little bit. Like walking backwards, just a hair here. You mentioned that classes and training and stuff like that. Can you speak to that just a little bit from an academic perspective? Because I think it's wild. I think it is so wild. We are used to a certain level of unpolish on all the things that we do as nerd culture ministers and missionaries, where because it is such the Wild West and everything is tip of the spear and we're chopping down trees as we're forging these paths, that we don't see the brick road right next to us. And so can you speak a little bit about how Dordt University specifically is kind of tackling some of that stuff in the way of training and equipping? Sure,
absolutely. So when the primary class that I teach right now is what I call engaging the world of gaming. And what it is I try to do several different things there. It's in many ways to say, it starts with the assumption that if we're going to legitimately and powerfully and effectively minister to either people in gaming culture, wherever they are, in order to effectively do that, you have to provide a legitimate diagnosis. what are the problems? What is gaming in 2024? Because gaming now isn't what it was when it was first introduced. And even then, I would argue the Pongs and the Space Wars and all those type of things, they were far more complex as a cultural artifact than we would have probably initially understood. The type of things they could function as in our lives. Because even if we think back to Mario and other games like that, how were they functioning in your life? It was building community between you and your family. It might have been a form of art to you. It might have been when you were really struggling it could still play a lot of different functions. And it did for the people that made them as well. But you talk about 2024, and I think that, say, with the church, if we want to reach and minister effectively, equip, and not just that, but allow people like us who love so much this gaming culture, then we need to understand not only what it is, but what it can be, to begin to understand. And so one of the things is, I teach my students that gaming is, well, if you look at it from a philosophical perspective, what is play? We even have to, as a church, go deeper to say, fundamentally, what is play? How did God intend play to be used in human life? And when we start to drill down, we realize that play isn't just something extra. Play is fundamental to human existence and human community, and that some of the play scholars that I follow even would make the claim that you cannot have authentic, good civilization and society as God intended it to be without the playful, without a healthy, spiritually rich understanding of play. Because you think about things like war and how we make up rules that you can't attack an enemy doctor on the field, right? Because that's fair, that's good play. Well, or we wear uniforms, we dress up, right? That all these things are healthy, playful approaches to life in a very complex world. And without it, we lapse into a lot lesser state, what we weren't meant to be. So even just with my class, helping them understand from a Christian perspective, what our church fathers and what people today are talking about play, the latest sociology and anthropology on what play is, that alone is already beginning to help us shape our understanding of, okay, what is play capable of and what is it not? Because once we understand that, we can say, what are video games capable and what are they not? Because sometimes we idolize gaming, we make them try to do something they're not really made to do. And so I try to help them there, but then I take them into to say, okay, let's look at video games and let's look at it in two ways. How are video games used by people outside nerd culture? So military uses video games to rehab soldiers and get them back into the fight. If you think about vocational, right now, I would say a lot of therapists and a lot of psychologists are using video games now to help people with burn trauma, to help them to overcome trauma in their lives from bad parenting situations or whatever, or even to just be able to use like something like a Skyrim to role play. And so I'm not powerful, I'm not strong, I don't have courage, but my warrior in Skyrim does. And as the trained psychologist takes them through that, they can use Skyrim and other video games to experience incredible strength and recovery in their lives and be able to do things they wouldn't have ordinarily have done. So I try to show people, okay, this is how video games are being used, but this is also how video games function in people's lives. Like I talked about that one boy who died young, and video games for him was a source of living, a source of being able to flourish in a way he wouldn't have been able to otherwise. Or people can use them as a form of community or solidarity, or there's so many different ways. So I take them through, and so we can get a better picture of gaming. And I talk about the history, to understand where it came from, that it is a very complex space. When it started with Atari and it started with all these other things and where it's gone. Just so that, because these people are going to be going into all kinds of different things. Some of them are never going to go into nerd culture ministry. They're not going to go into these type of things, but they might be a church elder. They might be
Yeah.
They're going to be parents with children or teachers with, probably at this point, 30 to 40% of their students are going to be people who game.
Oh, yeah, or more, right? Like, as the days go on. I was actually, I was watching something on, it was either Instagram or TikTok. At this point, they're basically the same thing for me. I don't know which is which anymore. The lines have blurred. And so, but I was watching a guy explain that the nomenclatures and the verbiage that we use is starting to shift into video game language, in the same way that, because this is our common experience and our bonding moments. And so in the same way that we have a lot of sports analogies in our language today, he's like, we're hearing now a lot of video game terminology, like, hey, where are we dropping? That's a Fortnite term, or really any other battle royale where you drop out of the sky, just to mean like, hey, where are we going? Like, we're on the road. Where are we going now? And even getting murked, or that's when somebody just completely takes you out, and you had no shot at doing anything. Or my favorite one is send them straight to the gulag, which means basically the same thing. It's from Call of Duty. Like, the guy just got absolutely obliterated, and he's got to work his way back. Like some of these other terms that we use in video games starting to permeate our everyday lives, and so there's not really there's less of a separation between my video gaming is compartmentalized over here and my actual real life is compartmentalized over here. They're starting to, thank you, Gen Z, they're starting to kind of like bridge the gap, because that is their shared experience. And so it sounds to me like you're teaching the same thing, and this is what we believe at Love Thy Nerd and through the Nerd Culture Ministry Collective, that those two do not need to be separate. They actually should function more in tandem than it, like, as adversaries. And so where do you see all of this going with Nerd Culture Ministry from an academic standpoint? Because you guys have to have a trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the success of the Guild, we've begun to think about a bigger program. And there are lots of different opportunities for great gaming programs at the collegiate level. Those that focus on esports, those that focus on game design, and on it goes. But I think that it's for Dordt and our own DNA as like I said, we're very much about mission and education. So we're thinking about creating a 2-year certification program that is intended for people who feel called to the gaming ministry field, and then to equip them with the sort of tools that will make them effective, as well as equipping them with a network of people that are in their corner and that they can work with and dialogue with as they're going through their own unique journey through the gaming ministry field. And so this will, it's still very much in process right now, but we're thinking about beginning in fall of 25, and it'll be a 2-year certification that will have a combination of classes like counseling, fundamental classes like counseling, business, biblical foundations, and some theology, but then also some unique classes to really help sharpen different skills like content creation or digital missions. What does it even mean to think about missions in a digital space? It's so new. Everyone's still thinking about it. And to begin to have those good principles on what that might be and that sort of a thing. We've also wanted to make it to where there's a lot of flexibility and freedom as well. So having some independent courses in there for students to, if they're wanting to look and work with professors on a different type of gaming ministry, to have that opportunity and that time to do so, along with internship opportunities too, so that ultimately what we're hoping is that we're equipping and then also being able to put them in a place to be successful, whether it's at a job placement or with that network. So
that to me, my question was very leading because I knew that. And so, like, but that to me is tremendously exciting. I mean, overwhelmingly exciting, because some of the things that we have lacked along the way in nerd culture ministry is the validity of anything that is not seen as completely frivolous. And when you start talking about things at the collegiate level, then you start to kind of get out of the fun play and into the serious. And so if you take something like nerd culture ministry, video games, tabletop, Dungeons and Dragons, whatever it is, esports, doesn't matter, right? If you take something and you give it all the credence in the world to say, hey, we are now building a certification program, right? Like, we're going to certify people in this ministry. That's huge. As an organizational leader, if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, yeah, I've got I have a certification in nerd culture ministry," like, I don't have a certification in nerd culture ministry, and so the credence that even it lends to me from people who want to do the things that we're laying the groundwork for, it's huge. Like. And then, like, even outside of our organizations, moving into, like you were talking about, churches, being pastors or elders, or, even Sunday school teachers, or people that serve on committees, or it doesn't matter. Just being a part of that ecosystem, knowing that there is an entire, not generation, but larger than that, it's a demographic of people that are not being reached by traditional church outreach mechanics, it's, for lack of a better word. It is so needed. And I am very glad that you're doing the hard work of putting all this together, convincing people who otherwise would probably not give it the time of day. But one of the things that I think is the most important about it is how you have approached it. You talked about it briefly, but we actually don't have a whole lot of time to talk about it. But I want you to speak just a little bit more about the guild and kind of like what that atmosphere is, the kind of people it draws in, and even speak a little bit to, kind of the relationships that have started to build around not just the guild as an idea or a group, but the space that the guild actually gathers in.
Yeah. So, the way that we structure it is, the biggest draw nights are what we call Casual Friday. And it can be Friday or Saturday, but it generally brings in 40 to 60, maybe 70 students on those nights. And really, it's a time for us. So we always order pizza. We always grab snacks and that sort of a thing, and drinks for them. And they can play whatever they want. I tend to go down there and make sure that I shake every one of their hands, make sure how they're doing, make sure I keep plugged into their lives. But they're there just to be together. So you'll on those nights, you'll have typically a D&D one-shot being run by one of our trained DMs, and you always hear screams from the rooms about they killed a red dragon or something. And it's just a beautiful thing, and so we have that going on, and then you'll have just so many people just either, some people are doing homework, stuff at a table. Probably the most popular is you'll probably have 10 people playing Smash, or there's a couple really popular games called Tower Fall and other things like that are and then you'll probably have people playing overnight, and the whole atmosphere is just one of collegiality, one of just being together. We'll pray together beforehand, and I think that what's happened, over the time, it's been so interesting, because at first I had no idea what to expect. The whole thing I wanted this to be based on is is authenticity and genuine relationships, right? To be able to, so a lot of people, we had one girl named Abigail come in, and she had no, she knew nobody at Dordt, and she was really lonely. And she came in, and she told me, now she's a guild leader. She leads the TTRPG. She loves it so much, and she's really infected the people. As she's gotten a feel for the vision, she's really been able to share. She's over probably, I don't even know, like 7 or 8 student DMs.
Wow.
And she has to kind of navigate all that. But they've all taken on her gentleness and her, and like because they have all these D&D groups that kind of function throughout the weeks, and they have become not just D&D players together, but they've become little communities that share life together, share their heartaches and sorrows as well as their happiness. And Abigail one day came and told me, and she just said, this is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. Like, legitimately. Like, I tear up, because to come from her, she said, this has become my home. This has become my family. And I believe, at some point, somebody had come to our school, just to check out what our program was doing. And they interviewed every one of the leaders, which it's kind of an emotional time for us because I've had these leaders, they helped me build this, and they're about to graduate. And so as they're being interviewed, each one of them cried, right? Because for them, and even now you can tell, we're getting a little gruff with each other because because it's really going to be hard to say goodbye. It's going to be really deeply painful. Because for a lot of people here, it's just that, it's here that they really do see finally the connection that, what I love and my Mario Kart and my League of Legends play and all that stuff, it's better in community. But it's also something that God is smiling about. Like, wow, I did an incredible jungle run, and now I know through the classes and everything else that God's not like, this is less than a beautiful thing of pottery. This is something that I too am elbowing Michael the Archangel, saying, "Did you see that jungle run? That's incredible, bro." And that has changed them. That has changed them, and I think that there's such a wholesome. Now they're going to leave, and just know that God sees them as a powerful part of the kingdom. And so I feel like those events and the D&D to the private sessions and everything else, that's the sort of vibe that's there. That's a safe space for people to not only know that they're loved, know that they're accepted, but also to explore what that means for them in a safe space. And I don't know if that answers your question. Wow.
Brad, it more than answers my question. Those are the things that I want people to know about this space. We constantly use, verbiage like, hey, we think that the things that you love matter because they matter to you and you matter to God. And so that kind of connection is important, not just from Christian to secular, but from Christian to Christian, right? Especially growing up in a culture which most of us have that at best is marginalized and at worst is demonized. You're going to hell for the things that you like. So being able to step into a space and be like, let me train you, let me equip you, let me do some massive amounts of discipleship by way of Dungeons and Dragons. Pushing little pieces of cardboard across a table, or moving ones and zeros on a screen, or just drama of the mind, theater of the mind in these TTRPGs. And so I love that. And I want more people to hear about that. And honestly, whenever in 2025, it'll be before that everything starts to open up for the certification program. Is this something that people will be able to do online, or did it have to be in person? What kind of is the vision for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We envision this as we probably think that a lot of the students that are going to want to take this are people who already have families, most likely, and who are probably have busy lives, and so we want it to be online, so that and we want it to be some. Yeah, so you don't have to come to Dordt. You don't have to come to Northwest Iowa to take this program.
I'm gonna be there next week, so it's not super easy to get there. But once you're there, then you're there. Like, I don't think they let you leave. So.
No, that's right. That's right. Once you're here, you're one of us. But yeah, it's online, and I'm trying to think. And I think the only requirement is that you are in academic good standing, and that you always. I think it was at least 1 year of college in academic good standing. So there's a lot of opportunity if you don't have your master's or anything like that. We really and even in that, there's a lot of conversations that are willing to be had, depending on where people are at in life and everything. What we really want to do is, if you have a heart for nerd culture, whatever that means, whatever sector that is, we want to provide the tools, because we really do believe that the 3.2 billion gamers out there deserve people who are well trained, whose hearts are now, given these type of tools to be so successful. Because this is a type of age where we need good answers. We need to raise the bar. We need to have people who are incredibly well trained, because the problems and the challenges that we're going to meet in gaming ministry require us to be really ready for that. And that's what we're trying to provide. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I'm a big fan. And just for anybody watching and or listening, like, LTN is bought in all the way on this. We're doing everything that we can to help this vision become a reality. And we are also going to be partnering in the way of internships. And so we're going to be a place to dump these bright-eyed, bushy-tailed students into the deep end of nerd culture ministry. And we're super excited about it. So if you have any other questions about that stuff, all the links are going to be in the show notes. Please contact Brad and figure that out. But hey, Brad, before we get out of here, we'd like to ask people one final question here. What if you could go back to when all of this stuff started? You showed up, you got off the plane, you pulled into your office the first day, and you're like, this is going to be great. Nobody bought into what you wanted. Nobody thought anything was going to be good. What would you go back to that moment and tell little baby Brad? What would you tell him to help his time there be a little bit smoother, or maybe start off a little bit further on down the road?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that ultimately what I would tell my younger self is that my experience with gaming has introduced me to some of the most beautiful stories and people and things that I couldn't have even imagined at that point. And that gaming is such a beautiful space that has a serious place in the kingdom, but it's one of responsibility and freedom. That I would tell myself that our gaming imagination as Christians is too small. What we can use Minecraft for, how we can use our Call of Duty sessions to reach others. Like, dream big, because the Holy Spirit, man, he can allow us to do these incredible, beautiful things. We just don't push in hard enough. But at the same time, being a gamer, that's discipleship. That's part of our discipleship. That's part of our holiness, our call. And so I would remind myself that, man, do this and do it to the hilt, but do it knowing that you are called to this freedom and responsibility, and take that all the way, man. And yeah, that's what I would say.
Brad, that's awesome. Thank you so much, man, for sharing that with us, and for sharing just a little bit of your time today. Again, anybody who has any questions, like, where can they reach you? What's some of the spaces that they can find John?
Sure. The best way is going to be my Dordt email, brad.hickey@dordt.edu. And remember, that's DORDT. It took me a while to get used to. But that's the best way. And then we can go from there. So yeah, any questions, any thoughts, any pushback, whatever. I love to just dialogue with people about this, because ultimately it just makes us sharper and stronger. And that's what I care about.
And this is still in the molding process. And so if you've got a little bit of insight. Brad would love, I can tell you this from personal experience, would love to take a meeting with you. So set it up, and all those things will be in the show notes, or you can see it on the screen if you're watching on our video syndicated platforms. Well, hey, Brad, thanks again, man, so much for taking time to hang out with us today. I appreciate it. And for everybody else that's listening
you too, Bubba.
and or watching, make sure that you come back for the next episode. And we have got a lot of really cool things in store for you. On the 15th, if you're listening in real time, on the 15th of this month, we are going to be dropping an announcement about NCMS 2024, and you're going to want to be there. I promise you that. I'm Brad, I haven't even asked you. I bet you're going to be there, right?
Oh, you know it.
Yeah,
Nothing
you
can stop
didn't
me
even
from
know the
being there
dates
this
or
year.
anything.
No, I don't care.
Yeah, after being there last year, that's what I told everybody. I was like, man, I don't think that we're going to have a problem selling out this year. And once we start to announce where it is, I think that that's just going to blow everything more out of the water. So stay tuned on the 15th of this month for that. Follow us on socials at NCM Collective on just about every major platform. And check us out at Love Thy Nerd or at Lux Digital Church on social media platforms as well. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the NCMU podcast. We're going to get out of here, but if no one else tells you this, just remember it's true. Jesus loves you, nerds.